Gledson Pompeu, Advisor for Innovation and Digital Government at the Federal Court of Auditors, TCU. A reference in digital transformation and innovation in the public sector, Gledson is a fundamental voice in the technological modernization of Brazil. With a career marked by leadership in digital transformation initiatives, Gledson has accumulated experience in information technology management and digital governance. In addition to his work at the TCU, he was a partner at Dominando TI and MG2, our Educaco and Tecnologia do Informação, where he helped train professionals in emerging technologies. As an expert in innovation in the public sector, Gledson has stood out for promoting the modernization of digital services, contributing to a more efficient and transparent public administration.
Okay, here at Mobile World Congress Day 2, and I have somebody from my homeland in Brazil. So this makes me warm and excited. We've had ministers, governors, CEOs of telecommunication companies, large companies, banks, fintechs, and now we bring the government through IT. Thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, Gledson, it's a real pleasure to have you here. You have been in a government institution for over 30 years, but in a breadth of experience starting with IT. So tell the people out there that look at your role and say, how does somebody get there? How did you get here?
Yeah, I've worked with IT in the government for more than 30 years. And for the last 10 years, I was assigned a role to drive digital transformation and innovation inside our agency, inside the Federal Court of Accounts, but mostly in the Brazilian government. The Brazilian government was in a very bad position in terms of digitalizing services and processes. And we started a movement, we called it Brazil 100% Digital, to drive this innovation movement and drive the digitalization of the Brazilian government. So I kind of went into this because my boss at the time, the minister from the Federal Court of Accounts, he saw a lot of news about artificial intelligence, big data, and innovation. And we were on the IT leadership team, and we supported him with information and ideas on how to get this movement going. And most of all, that's how I got into this innovation movement, by supporting his ideas. He wanted an innovation lab inside our agency when no one in Brazil even thought about it.
Yeah.
And we helped drive this innovation movement. We helped create the lab. We wrote a paper to be used as the innovation reference paper for our agency. And we've been 10 years into that.
That is incredible. So that's been your journey from IT as Chief Innovation Officer and putting Brazil into what a lot of people would be used to in countries like Denmark, digital citizenship and digital inclusion and things that don't look like big lines. This is not an easy challenge when we look at the size of our country and the population of our country. And that challenge has many layers. So in this whole idea of how does Brazil go digital services for citizens, tell me a bit about what the project was and where did you guys get?
Yeah, the idea, what we thought was, let's look at what we have as global references, Denmark, Korea, Estonia. And we looked at the UN ratings that they, every 2 years, they do a complete survey of how governments across the world are doing in digital. And they look at 3 pillars. They look at digital services, they look at the telecom infrastructure, and they look at the human capital, if people are capable of using. So we started with the Brazilian government trying to drive the digital services, because Brazil was kind of stuck in a pre-e-government area where some services were just forms posted online and nothing but that.
And thousands of different websites, right?
Yeah.
We all know what that felt like.
Yeah, and the efficiency for the citizen was non-existent. And we started to drive this. We promoted a huge conference in Brazil in 2015. We brought leaders from digital governments from across the world to share the message, to share experience. And by 2017, 18, the government started to gain traction, they assembled a good team for innovation and for digital government, kind of like the GDS in the UK, to have an office that could drive and could help other agencies do their transformation. And from them till now, they managed to reach, I think today it's like 4,000 digitalized services across the federal government.
Wow.
And
congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
It was
an
easy task.
Not at all.
Not an easy task politically, and just we all know.
Yeah, and so this, let's say, this side of the digital services, it has gone well at the federal level. Kind of 2 or 3 years ago, they started the Rede GovBR, the network GovBR. So they challenged the states and municipalities to join this effort. And last year, it was approved by a presidential decree, the National Strategy for Digital Government. Okay. So now we have goals for everybody.
Okay, so one of the things that, like, transforming a government into a fully government is a dream come true, but also a massive responsibility. Requires, you talked about a few things, like the right infrastructure, because we're now talking about hosting, leveraging, creating, managing, connecting to data, or transforming things that were analog, like paper forms, into data services. You said 4,000 of them.
Yeah.
And now that it's a decree, what does this mean? Can Brazilians expect everything to be digital? Everything to be in an app? Like, what does this look like?
Yeah, it will take time, for sure. And the Brazilian government, with this network, the idea is to support the states and municipalities to do this transformation. Of course, Brazil is huge, and it's a huge inequality between great cities and capitals and the small municipalities.
Of course.
But yes, at least at the state level, I think in a relatively short time, let's say 1 or 2 years, we can expect the majority of the services provided by states to be also digitalized. So they are moving fast, they are moving in a steady pace. And you talked about the infrastructure. This is a good thing, because in the federal level, they started with DPI, with a digital public infrastructure movement. And they have a single sign-on, the Acesso GovBR. So they have exceeded, I guess, 100 million users logged into this system.
That's amazing. I remember Luis back in the day at some point telling me he was at about 30 million users.
Yeah.
And us talking about digital identity and personhood, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah.
Yeah. And now we have these assets that are, okay, we have everyone already in the system. We have the basic register for all these citizens in the federal system, and this can be used by states and municipalities. So this also drives the more speed into this transformation. But we still have some challenges there. For instance, data sharing.
Okay.
It's a political fight to get data out of the silos of health, of education, of social services, and so on.
Yeah.
And this is a problem that we still have to solve, because back in the day, people would like to say information is power. Today, data is power.
Totally.
And the ministries, the secretaries, they come up with every kind of excuse to not share data.
Yeah.
And I work for the Brazilian audit agency. We have a mandate to demand the data we need. And yet we sometimes have a hard time getting the data we need to audit the policies.
So y'all heard it. So don't be so upset. And the next time somebody doesn't give you data, it's a difficult job. And the other thing I think is, like, I've heard every country sitting here. I've been super fortunate. We've had France, UK, like countries in different countries in Africa, now Brazil, Argentina. Every industry the same.
Yeah,
This
it
whole
doesn't
thing of
change.
sharing, we don't do that very well. So how do you get over that challenge? Through security, through anonymization? Like, how do you overcome the human challenge of, it's my precious, it's mine, I'm not going to share it? How do we
It's
derive to people to understand this, like, non-zero sum game?
yeah, it's mostly a change of culture and a change of the political view of data
Okay.
to make the leaders understand that they can do more if they share their data, because they will be able to use data from the other agencies as well. And we at the audit court, we try to drive this by example,
Okay.
because what
So
we're
what have
doing,
you done? What have you
yeah,
shared?
what we are
Tell us.
doing right now, for instance, we are now doing an audit on the
Okay.
uh, superior high-level education in Brazil. We are trying to understand the reasons why the Brazilian education doesn't support the demand in engineering, STEM, engineering, science, technology
Yeah.
fields. And what we are doing now, we are looking into the education registers. Okay, how many people are coming out of each level of education in Brazil? And we are looking at the work
Yeah.
and the social services and the salaries, because we have access to this kind of data,
Yeah.
so that we can measure, okay, what is the line of education is that provided by universities, by the technical schools, by the Federal Institute of Education. Uh, what what of these? Which of them are providing professionals that become more successful in the field? And we only get this because we can cross data from different silos.
Of course.
The Brazilian government is starting to work with the concept of data ecosystems, but they are still seeing ecosystems in silos. We are trying to make them see that we should have a government data silo with everything in it. And of course, we need sometimes to restrict access to some information, to use anonymization for privacy reasons. But data is so much powerful to design, to execute, to control the public policies and the public services. And this is part of our current challenge. And another challenge is, okay, making the government understand that they have been extremely successful in digitalizing services, but this is only one part of the equation. We need to enable people to access these services, as well as to access the services offered by the private sector. Because we have challenges, of course. Brazil is a huge country, so to get everyone connected in the small municipalities, in the rural areas, it's hard. We have 5G trying to get there.
Trying to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is a challenge that I think it's the hardest one right now. That is, how do we invest in the digital literacy of the population?
Okay, so not only how do we make sure that the right incentive structures in the data is helping us make better human capital readiness, but how do we make sure that the people that we do have can actually make sense of all this tech that we're building?
Yeah.
Where do you start? What a challenge.
Yeah.
A challenge that, most industries, I think, have failed miserably. And what a responsibility that technology has. I often say this to people. The first comment you talked about was like data sharing and this understanding. I don't know why the public doesn't understand that this is the largest asset class. that we have ever built as a human species. More than we sell our coffee or our bananas or our beautiful humans or our sports skills for. Brazil has like, how many millions of people?
230?
Yeah, I was going to say 240. So I was like, okay, 230 something millions of humans. And how much data are we producing every day? That is a sovereignty opportunity for change.
Yeah.
But people don't know. We live like robots, endlessly scrolling. We've traded followers for friends and push notifications for feelings. How do we change the population to understand this slavery we've all found ourselves in? How do we turn that into an asset? Does it need to hit the pocket? Like, does data need to have a value?
I think it's more like we need people to understand the potential of what they can get from the digital world, because
Okay.
we have, of course, the inequalities, social inequalities in Brazil that are among the highest in the
Screaming.
world.
Correct.
And with that comes the inequalities also in education. And we have a challenge because it's not just the digital literacy, it's the literacy
The
that comes
literacy
before.
preceding.
Yeah.
Which actually, digitally, I see it as to me, is no different than parent controlling or our notion of parent control for security on the settings of a phone. The lack of literacy that precedes digital
Yeah.
is you have a weapon here. You have something that has been socially engineered by some of the brightest minds in the world of keeping you just like that.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Do
We,
you see it as a tool? I
yeah.
hope to see it as a tool. So like, here's a spoiler alert, but
No, I think we have to start from the basics. We have to start from school. We have to get we have to really implement what is already in our basic education law. That is, okay, digital literacy is part of the school curriculum, but it needs to be, in fact, in there,
yeah.
because it's one thing to put there in
In the
the
last
law.
line
Yeah,
in like a
okay,
day.
this is part of the curriculum, but we don't have the right infrastructure. We don't have teachers that are able to
Are
teach
literate to
this.
teach
Yeah,
this, yeah.
because even they don't have this literacy yet. So how do we expect them to be able to do this? So it's a really, really huge challenge. We have to, and we have to start from the bottom. We have to start building this literacy in kids and in middle school, in high school. But at the same time, we have to invest in the higher education, because we have detected Brazil has an estimate of like at least 100,000 or some hundreds thousands deficit in professionals for computer science, engineering, science in general. And when we look at the policies, for instance, Brazil has the ProUni, the FIES, the policies that pay or help pay high school for the poorer. And when we look at the statistics, the top 10 areas where Brazil is financing education are law school, med school, administration, but this is not what Brazil needs. And we compare this to Korea, where we know that in Korea, they, from time to time, they look, okay, what our industry needs, what our country needs. We need formation in these areas. Okay, these are the areas where
we're gonna go spend our money on.
yeah, this is where we put the money. This is
ROI.
what we need. So
Studied.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we are just now doing an audit on this to try to show the government, okay, this is the situation, this is the deficit we have, this is what you are doing, you're putting your money in the wrong place, and okay, how can we get better than this?
Once again, the power of data telling stories, right?
Yeah,
The
that's it.
power of these understandings and these KPIs that we're able to start pinpointing and saying, wait a minute, we're here to serve public good.
Yeah.
How are we using our infrastructure and our power? A huge part of this, of changing government services, of changing and using technologies that are not government built, requires security. How have you looked into this ecosystem of technology, working in innovation, and proving, you bring people online, you explain to them how they work with things. How do you keep them safe?
Well, I think it's a worldwide challenge. Okay, it's not just us in this case.
It's not
Yeah,
a Brazilian challenge.
yeah,
It's not a Tribunal de Contas challenge
yeah,
either.
yeah. That's a worldwide
Not
challenge,
alone.
and what we need to do is trying to educate people, and we have a specialized branch in our court that audits security.
Okay.
And we have just completed a round of audit engagements looking at how the government is dealing with from the basic infrastructure of Windows domain services to, okay, how is the government agency educating its own servants about phishing attacks by
And
email.
fraud, yeah.
And the idea is, okay, we are building this, so these audit engagements, they work as a kind of a pilot of the method, and then we publish this method and try to drive the whole of the
Change.
government to go, okay, look into your environment and see if it's safe. Use our scripts here. It's ready. It's a recipe.
You're just like, here's a framework.
Yeah.
Off you go with the framework.
We don't even need to know
We won't look under the
the
hood.
results. Okay,
Yeah.
just solve the problem, please. So this is
Your
mostly
approach
what
to
we're doing.
auditing. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
because we know we can audit, okay, 2 agencies, 5 agencies, 10 a year. We are talking about maybe 2,000, even only in the federal level, okay? And then you go to states and municipalities. It's impossible to look into everything. So a great part of what we do is we try to educate the public service. We try to educate the agencies so that they can do better.
Yeah. And in this process of letting the community and others do better and use technology to do better, and how are you using technology as well internally? How do you're here at Mobile World Congress? The buzzword bingo of the month is AI, or maybe of the year. Maybe AI and quantum. We've heard, guys, how many times? Why AI and quantum? Like, we should probably have a dinger going on. How are you looking at that capacity also internally in the government? How is the government using and innovating, at the speed that the fraudsters are, which Brazilians are sure creative in fraud as well. So,
okay, we have in our court, we have been using AI for at least 10 years now. And
I've been saying this, guys. See, again, another person. AI is not yesterday's news. It was just not as sexy, right? Data science was just not as cool buzzwordy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we just call it data science and not AI, but we know it was.
We've been doing it for a couple of years. Okay.
Yeah. And we have been using it to audit and to implement continuous audit routines. So we do it on the payments that are done by the government. We get all these, the contracts, the bids. So we get all this data in. This is processed by automated routines, and we have just last year the IT team developed a new platform where any auditor can enter the system, develop his own check routines, and this gets into the automated system that runs every day, every week, every month, depending on what it is. And it just sends emails to the appropriate branches with alerts of what is found. So we have been developing these kind of routines for 10 years. With all the news of Gen AI, we started our own Gen AI team. and we deployed our chat TCU, which is based on the GPT Azure platform, but it's private, and it's now in the version 5.0, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with RAG, with
Ooh,
all the
we will need another episode just on this.
and it's open sourced for the government.
Okay.
So we have
Huh.
I guess we are already past other 50 agencies that got the code to implement their own chatbots.
Version.
And last year we developed our Copilot, because most of audit work is, okay, we look into things, and we have to sit down and write reports.
Yeah.
So we have our own version of Copilot. We call it Copilot TCU.
Okay.
That is integrated into Microsoft Word and integrated with all our internal systems.
Okay.
So the
So
audit,
you're using it to drive efficiency internally and having your own way of
yeah,
how does AI drive a
yeah.
system forward for you?
So with this, we can have the auditor ask our AI, okay, summarize this and that document from the process, help me understand this data. Okay, I'm auditing a new policy that I don't know much about. Okay, gather information about this and summarize it for me. So everything that we have been looking into the world doing with Gen AI, basically we are doing it internally with these two tools.
This is
And
so
we
cool
are
to hear.
sharing this, telling the government, okay, this is the way, use it, please.
Yeah. You were like, please, there are some things that we can actually just learn from other people. And
Yeah.
it's not because we're the government and we can't have it too. As a Brazilian, it gets me excited to hear one, you share these stories, see the audacity, but also the responsibility about this being a public good and for the people.
Sure.
So if you had a crystal ball, what are you hoping for in the future with all this technology change?
I think the main thing is we would like to see the government really, really serving citizens. I guess this is the goal.
This is why you get up in the morning.
Yeah, this is the goal. We want the government to use AI. Okay, use AI to be more efficient, use AI to save money internally, but most of all, use AI to serve the citizens. We had a kind of a bad example, like some 3 years ago, when the social service in Brazil started using AI to drive efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were doing, okay, let's look into data from the retirement request, because we have 1 million requests pending.
Mm-hmm.
And we find anything wrong, any data missing, okay, this is rejected. No, this is not serving the citizens.
Got it. So this is another responsibility layer that is not only just the prompt capacity for generative AI to understand the data, it's actually the prompt from the human to say, hey, listen,
Yeah,
what are we optimizing for?
yeah,
What is the
exactly.
value? What are we valuing the tomorrow? I often say this, like for me, finance of tomorrow will not only be data and monetary value, but hopefully something that we can all, feel a little bit more proud of.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit about the change that you've been making in the Brazilian government and the change that you've been bringing with technology to the citizens.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Great.